All right, welcome to Rapid Fire Manufacturing. Today I have Phil Miller. He is the owner of Star Machine. You've probably seen him on LinkedIn. I see him commenting on posts. He's going to a lot of events throughout the industry. So he started Star Machine, so he's managing a team and he's keeping the machines running and operating smoothly. He knows what it takes to run a successful business. So Phil, thank you for all that you're doing in the industry and thanks for joining.
Well, thank you, David, for having me.
One thing I wanted to know, how did you start Star Machine? What inspired you to kind of jump out and start a business?
The entrepreneurial spirit in me, I guess, was kind of the main driving. Always had this dream of having my own business. Got out of school doing mechanic work, and I always thought that was kind of where my life was going to end up as far as pursuing that career. And things happen in life, and changes come along, and I happened to work at a local machine shop, doing welding, fabrication, the whole 9 yards, but they were producing their own products. So that led to me working in the machine shop, ended up managing it, programming, having a couple guys that I was managing being the kind of the machine shop supervisor. And I saw that need in the community more so that your other fabrication shops didn't have a place to go to with all their machining needs, because where I worked, they were shying away from that because we were focused on our product, building our own products and stuff. So I saw the need, and then once we actually jumped ship and opened shop, I saw especially after getting on LinkedIn, I just was blown away by this industry. So the doors have flung open, and I've been welcomed into opportunities that I never saw coming.
That's awesome. It's cool to see something that was just a natural progression. You saw a pocket like, hey, this is a, kind of a gap where we need to address and start your own company based on that need. How was it first getting your customers? How did that transition feel?
So it was, looking back now, so we're just over 4 years in. It was probably the dumbest move I made, not having secured a couple relationships as far as a good few customers. My former place of employment gave me some work, just to kind of get us going, and that was a good relationship. And then I knocked on a couple doors, but there was one shop in particular that I started doing work for, and they have been the biggest advocate for me as far as word of mouth, and it just progressed from there. And I'm almost embarrassed to say that pretty much all of the work came from word of mouth, and that I didn't have to go to more doors, knocking on doors and begging for work. So one thing kind of led to the next, and especially after getting on LinkedIn, I was pretty blind to that social part of it, but just the relationships that have formed around that, around LinkedIn, and then going to events and meeting people, and you just get your hands into places that it just feels right as far as the work you find and the work you can get your hands on. So,
No, absolutely. Now, is there any tips for building trust with some of these long-term relationships? Like, did you have some strategies to, I guess, gain that trust?
listening to the customer, I would say that is the key to getting new customers, and listening to them and identify a problem that they're having. If a customer comes to me and says, "Hey, we're getting these parts for X amount of dollars," and this is, they'll go through their spiel of things or whatever, and I always come back to and try and listen to a point where they're like, identify a problem that they're having without them realizing. And I'll say, "Well, are you having quality issues?" And kind of go through those things. And I think a lot of it comes back to actually listening to the customer, and what they're saying, what they want, and just exceed their expectations. And I like to always come back to committed to doing the right thing. We make mistakes, and if we're willing to tell the customers and say, "Hey, we made this mistake, what can we do to make it right?" They're always willing to work with you if you have that attitude. So far, from my experience, customers are willing to have that trust in you. If we're willing to sometimes lose money on, let's say we have a customer out in New Jersey, and we're however 100 miles away, and shipping can be a detriment to sending good parts, and you kind of learn the hard way of once you have 50 to 100 parts that are damaged, they come back and you have to stand good for them. But I think once customers see that you listen to them, they're taken care of, they always get good parts to the point of losing money on a certain job, I think that's very important in a long-term relationship with a customer.
That's awesome. And it shows, yeah, the honesty and transparency goes a long way. People will forgive you for mistakes if you're just honest and transparent about everything,
Oh yeah.
versus sometimes people will try to hide stuff, and that's never good for business. So, yeah, no, that seems like a really good strategy. Now, how do you handle balancing the day-to-day with your leadership as well? Is that a challenge, and kind of how do you navigate that?
Well, definitely, it's definitely a challenge, but I like challenges. I'm more of the introvert type, so that's probably the biggest challenge I have, to be very open with my employees and fellow partners within the business. So I'm always challenging myself to be the leader I wish I had. And there's the daily challenges for me are trying to wear too many hats, you know, and that is necessary, especially starting out. You have to wear all those different hats and try to make everything come together and not try to do too much yourself, so we don't miss something. There's small details you can miss if you try to do too many different things. And so delegating is probably one of my biggest challenges, as far as I'm trying to, get that taken care of, as far as and getting the right people on the bus, and delegating it to the right people. And so
Yeah, I think I've heard that many times from people, especially within your first, 10 years or something like that, where delegating's been one of the biggest challenges too, because your tendency is like, hey, I can solve this, let me do it. But it's like now you're taken away from building the company because you're getting too involved. So
right.
I could definitely see that as being a huge challenge. So now I wanted to ask too, like, what kind of strategies do you have for scaling? Is that, in your future, is that something you're trying to do, is scale?
Yeah. I probably don't have a good strategy. So far, it's just been an organic growth. We get new customers, we get new work, we get repeat work. So we've just been kind of growing naturally.
Mhm.
We're going to be working with a marketing agency to do some more marketing, and then also targeting some trade shows that we want to have a booth at. That's kind of and we're also pursuing our AS9100 certification. That's kind of our main focus right now, so we can start advertising that way, and obviously, or hopefully, that'll lead to more growth. But then there's, always financial limitations and all that play into it. So,
Oh,
but
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, just the trade shows alone can add up. But again, if you get a couple of leads out of that could be very profitable just from, yeah, a couple different leads.
I would say the other thing we're really trying to focus on is be sure we're ready to partner with the right people. Building those relationships, just like EBITDA growth systems has been one of the, probably a key relationship that we've had. We went to their event, started learning their system, and they have a couple different things you can partner up with, as far as they do coaching, they do bookkeeping. We just signed up to do that. But I think that's key in business, surrounding yourself with people that want the best for us, and they're not just in it to, you get a business coach, and I can tell pretty quick if they're in it to get their money out of it, or if they're in it because they love what the people are doing, and they actually take an interest in the business, and they want the business to succeed. And they're not just looking for us to, hey, we're at X amount of dollars this year, we're going to double your value in so many years. And if their focus is on that, I'm not very interested until they're completely committed to the mission that we're on for our business, the values that we have. And so I think that's key, having those relationships around you. Obviously, the value of the business or the revenue sometimes hinders that, to partner up with somebody that wants however many dollars a month. So therefore, right now we're trying to focus to get up to that certain revenue to where we can partner up with the right people to get us to that next level.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think you really laid that out nicely too. It's you can kind of spot the authenticity of certain companies, and once you have a good working relationship and you realize, hey, they're not in it just for the dollar, they're actually adding value and want to see me succeed, that's where you're like, okay, this is a good partnership.
Right.
So no, that's a really good point to make. Now, as far as, someone who's thinking about starting their own business, what would you recommend to them? Maybe something you could have avoided that you wish you knew prior, or just some general advice you could give them.
Oh yeah, I consider myself too new in the business to actually provide that advice to somebody, but I would say back to what I was just saying about surrounding yourself with the right people. But be sure you have a good plan in place. And I'll go back to the mistake I made of not having those customers secured and go knocking on doors and say, what's the opportunity? This is what I'd like to do. What could we provide for you? And trying to have those relationships secure before you just go all in. At the same time, I feel strongly there's never a right time to start the business. And I keep hearing this over and over. It's like, if you wait till that perfect time, it's like, it'll never come. So I would say just be willing to change and adapt to the challenges that come along and don't get discouraged. Like, there's so many things that could get you discouraged, but just keep looking up and just keep grinding, I guess.
Absolutely. That's phenomenal advice. For those of you watching, stay tuned for more industry experts like Phil Miller. Phil, thank you so much for joining.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.